Olivia Newton-John, and I'm a lucky woman. I'm a breast cancer survivor. And that's why this film hits home with me. For much of my adult life, I've been deeply concerned for our planet and all life on it. And it's scary to think that our very environment, or at least what we humans are doing to it, could be contributing to the growing rate of many diseases, including breast cancer. Think about this. 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer in her lifetime. I was the one, even though I ate well, exercised, and didn't drink or smoke. So what caused it? 5 years away from surgery and chemotherapy and breathing a little easier, I'm really examining what caused my cancer. Was it from the pesticides sprayed on the fruits and vegetables I ate? Was it in the polluted air that I breathed when I went running? Or was it in the water that I drank? This film pieces together some fascinating clues about how our environment affects the health of women, as well as men and children.
What causes breast cancer? In fact, 1 out of every 10 women who get the disease is born with some defect in her genes. That means that 9 out of every 10 women who get breast cancer were born with healthy genes, and something happened to them in the course of their lifetime to give them the disease. We think that some part of the breast cancer that's occurring today may be due to environmental factors.
Why has it increased? I think that the toxicity, the pollutants, the chemicals generally in use in society as a whole, and in most places, is the cause. There is no other explanation.
I feel that it isn't so much that I inherited the gene that killed my mother, because it's a 2-step process, that I inherited the same environment that she resided in, and I inherited the same foods and the same pollution living in New Jersey, and that I didn't protect myself from a carcinogenic environment.
Well, basically, all cancer is genetic. It's all genes that are screwed up. Now, sometimes you inherit a screwed up gene from your mother or your father, and then you have hereditary breast cancer. More commonly, you inherit normal genes, and then something comes along in the environment and screws up the genes, a carcinogen. And so what we really are looking for is a combination of genes and environment. And probably most commonly, it's both together. You don't inherit a gene that's specific for breast cancer, but maybe you inherit a gene which makes you more susceptible to a carcinogen in the environment.
It's just not in harmony with nature any longer. Big highways and railways cutting through our territories. It's all contrary to our beliefs. And I know people call it progress, but I don't know what the end result of this progress is supposed to be. It's still beyond us. What are we supposed to be progressing to?
Most of the efforts to avoid cancer have focused on the individual. So once you recognize a hazard, you can either try to get rid of the hazard or you can try to avoid the hazard. For example, tobacco and smoking. Instead of going after the growers of the tobacco and the pollution in it, we tell people not to smoke. Or instead of going after supersonic planes or atmospheric nuclear testing, which damage the ozone layer, we to stop using underarm deodorant, or it's the refrigerators.
We're going to look at 2 key environmental problems that have been linked to breast cancer. The first is radiation, everything from nuclear testing to routine X-rays. The second is the huge family of toxic chemicals found in plastics and even certain therapeutic drugs. While we spend billions of dollars on cancer research, and still there is no cure, research on the prevention of cancer has been largely ignored. There are some things we can do to reduce our chances of getting cancer, such as eating a healthy diet and not smoking. But there is no escape from toxins that are in the very air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. How did these toxins get there? How can we sort out conflicting opinions? Who is responsible?
You know, more than 100 years ago, there were scientists who warned that cigarette smoking was going to be ignored. And it wasn't until more than 50 studies had accumulated in 20 different countries, all showing that cigarette smoking increased the risk of lung cancer and other diseases, that governments finally took action. In this situation with breast cancer in the environment, we have a similar problem, in that now we have a number of studies in a number of different countries, all suggesting that there is an increase in the risk of breast cancer with exposure to certain environmental contaminants.
Scientists have known of the damaging effects of radiation on health since shortly after X-rays were discovered at the turn of the century. The nuclear bombing of Japan in the Second World War caused massive destruction of the environment. We now recognize radiation to be one of the most hazardous substances on Earth, persisting for thousands of years.
One of the difficulties with understanding the relationship between radiation and breast cancer was the Hiroshima and Nagasaki studies. Researchers were looking at what was first cause of death. And so instead of looking at how many people had breast cancer, they looked at deaths. They finally reported an incidence rate. And at that point, we found that breast cancer had tripled in the Japanese population, whereas other cancers more connected with radiation in people's mind, like lung and colon cancer, had doubled. So it was increased by the greatest amount and had been missed by the researchers because of their focus on death.
Since World War II, ongoing nuclear testing has been conducted by a number of countries, and radioactive residues can now be traced worldwide in milk and water, fruits and vegetables, meat and fish. The catastrophe at Chernobyl in 1986 caused massive devastation. The radiation released in that accident was over 100 Hiroshima. And closer to home, the nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island destroyed our belief that North Americans could safely distance themselves from such disasters. We can't avoid the radiation that's right in our own body. How much radiation are we being exposed to? Exactly how much is safe?
There is no level of radiation that will not cause cellular damage. But in order to see the result of this damage, it sometimes takes 20 or 30 years, called a latency period. In Japan, young girls under age 10 exposed to the radiation, when they reached maturity, had 6 times the expected rate of breast cancer. We sometimes forget that during the atmospheric nuclear weapon testing from 1946 to 63, we blanketed North America with radioactive fallout. It was measured in milk, it was measured in other foods, and children born during that period were exposed in utero and in early childhood to radiation that was not normal to our environment. And if we look at the source of most of our pollution, we'll find that it comes from preoccupation with creating megadeath. For example, World War I, chlorine gas was separated out. Since then, we have tens of thousands of